Hey everyone, welcome back to another review here on the Outlaw Nation channel. I am the Outlaw John Rocha, joined like I have been a lot of my recent reviews with my fellow Geek Buddy here, actor, writer, some point maybe showrunner, director, maybe do his own documentary one day. You never know. My man Shannon McClung, how are you, Shan?
I've already got a subject in mind for my documentary, the life and times of John the Outlaw Rocha.
No, please God, no.
It's gonna be a tell-all.
I think
the Val's got nothing on you.
One outlaw documentary in a lifetime is enough, man. I think it's enough. But yeah, I mean, for those of you who've been watching the channel and keeping up on the reviews we've been doing, Shannon and I did the first 3 episodes of The Vow. We were going to revisit it, but, it became like a speeding train, The Vow, as it got into these middle episodes of the season and towards the tail end as well. And we just thought, well, screw it. We'll just review the whole season when it finally finishes. And that's what we're doing today. This is a spoiler review for as much you can have a spoiler review for a documentary. So if you haven't watched The Vow, thank you for clicking play on this video. But for the love of God, please go watch The Vow, the 9 episodes of The Vow on HBO. So much to jump into, of course. This is a documentary that is exploring the NXIVM cult that kind of consumed a number of cities and states and countries in the world. Shannon, through the last 6 episodes of this documentary, we went everywhere from Canada to Albany, New York, to Mexico, to Europe, to so many different places, showing the expanse of NXIVM, and we got to know a lot more about Keith Raniere. We got to know a lot about the Bronfman sisters. We got to know so much more about our main characters as well throughout this thing. Now, you've got the last 6 episodes. We're talking about the whole season, though, as a whole. What's your feeling now that the last episode is dropped in season 1? Before we jump into the fact that there is a season 2 already, this thing, what's your feeling about season 1 as you look back on it now?
I mean, I think the strongest episodes, the strongest allure for the storytelling was what we already covered. It was episodes 1 through 3. Episode 1 was a little dry. It kind of had to lay the foundation. 2 was interesting. 3 is when they really kind of pulled back the curtain, and you got to see some of the more scandalous aspects of what went on at NXIVM. It was the episodes after that it started to lose me a little bit.
Let's talk about that.
I want to say I think it was episode 4 where they were talking about, it was that anonymous woman.
Yeah, I think Lori was her name or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting because you got to get another story from the inside of DOS, which was the subsection of NXIVM that was just the women who were branding themselves, who were getting branded.
Yeah.
But we never go back to her, and it was kind of like the overall vibe that I got at the end of the season was, I think you probably had enough material for 6 episodes, and you stretched it out to 9.
Yeah. Keep going.
And at the end of the credits of episode 9, I was kind of like, that's it, huh? And then there was the preview, and I was like, part 2. Boo! It's as far as I know. I mean, I wasn't reading a ton up on The Vow in between viewings, but there had been no indication that this was part 1 of 2, and part 2, at least from the ad. Which this is what HBO does very well. They have a great marketing department. I'm like, that's what I want to know. That's what's going on now. And I imagine they are still working on it currently, like all through quarantine, all through COVID. Yeah. Just because, he hasn't gone to trial yet, I don't think, right?
Right. No, not yet. In real life, he has, yes. But he hasn't been sentenced yet.
Okay, that's what it was. He hasn't been sentenced yet.
I say real life like this isn't a documentary about real life. Well, in current times. Current times. He's awaiting sentencing.
But even you and I had talked about it, off mic about how there's still some craziness that's apparently happening. And I'm like, that's the stuff I want to know about. I mean, I had read up a little bit on Keith Raniere once The Vow started, and I knew about the whole what is it, multi-level marketing thing that he did? I don't remember the name of it, but I'm like, I want to go back further. Like who who was this guy? Where did he come from? Where did he get this? Where did he get people to believe that he had a 240 IQ? They said. I mean, and again, I don't have the metrics of IQ ratings at the ready. But I remember I was reading an interview with someone that was like, for someone to say they have an IQ of 240, it's like saying I can bench 1,300 pounds. Like it's one of those things that's like, that's not a thing. That's not a thing at all. And to see, like, obviously, he had a very magnetic personality. There was something that could draw people in, and I wish we found out more about where that came from.
It's a great point. The creators, the directors here, Kareem Ammar, Jahan Nujayem, I hope I'm saying that right, Omar Mulek, all got involved with this, of course, and shot a majority of the episodes and produced the episodes as well. So I'm saying they shot all the episodes really and produced all the episodes as well. But like watching this and feeling through the middle episodes that they started to 6, 7, and 8 is when they really started to lose me a little bit. 4 and 5, I was still in because we were still checking back in with Mark and Bonnie and seeing their relationship. That's Mark Vicente and Bonnie Piez, who some of you may know from the prequels and Star Wars. Of course, Sarah Edmondson as well. And that's when we started to and then Catherine Oxenberg got involved. That's where I started to really dip out because I didn't care about her daughter. I didn't care about them being sucked into this cult situation. This is a rich, beautiful, young the daughter who's got everything at her command. Anything she could possibly want is there for her to have. So I didn't really care about her. I cared about Sarah. I cared about Bonnie. I cared about Mark. I cared about these people who had been struggling and fighting and trying to figure out who they are and hearing their journeys. And we did. Every time the documentary got back to them, I was back dialed into the show, including Anthony Ames, of course, is Sarah Edmondson's husband. And when he finds out the confrontation that happens, and the way they led up to the branding too, I thought with the text messages, with the conversations, with that moment where she's like, "Well, if you're going to choose your husband over me," that was Lawrence Saltzman. It kind of blew you away. You're like, "Oh my God, how deep is in this?" And you hear Sarah say, "We were just role play. I'm not really your servant. You're not really my master." And Lauren, you can hear her on the phone, is like, is essentially saying like, "No, you are. That's what the commitment is." And so you just go into your mind like, and I agree with you, Shannon, I want to explore how deep he burrowed into these minds to control them and make them do the things that they were doing and somehow override their natural judgment to not be a conduit for this man, to emaciate young women and serve them up as sexual conquests for Keith Raniere. It was insane to watch how many women were willing to serve their own gender up for this man, including Allison Mack. I mean, that moment when Sarah Edmondson realizes that the branding is the initials of Keith Raniere and Allison Mack, that is a moment that comes to life so powerfully in the documentary. I had read about this before, but seeing someone actually come to terms with that realization was just so overwhelming and saddening and shocking and horrific. And so you felt that. But like with you, man, they lost me a little bit when they veered into other areas. I just was like, do we really need to know about, Catherine Oxenberg? And nothing against Catherine Oxenberg. That is her daughter, her flesh and blood. Clearly she's afraid. Clearly they're a victim. But she was a conduit at times to these other people who had gotten out, Shannon. What did you think about that? We got to meet the lawyer who got out. We got to meet a couple of the former Keith Raniere lovers and assistants who got out. Did you find that fleshed out the story a bit more, seeing how far back and how far deep this went and how many people realized that it was the wrong thing and got out and then got persecuted and vilified by Keith Raniere, including that lady who was the head of security or whatever, how she got persecuted and all of her money was basically used to fight them off in the courts. Yeah, I mean, that is one of the sections in the show that would pull me back in. That was something I found a little more interesting. And again, as you said, nothing against Catherine Oxenberg and her daughter, India, nothing against their struggle. But as a viewer, it's kind of like,
I've seen you drive your car into your house so many times. I don't need to see you having another. I don't need to hear you having another phone conversation of information that has already been relayed to us.
Yeah.
Those moments where you find out, yes, how they were very similar, it seems, to Scientology, how they would go after them legally. Like, people would want to leave. They would they want to be paid for the work that they did. And not only did they not get that money, they had to use their own funds to then defend themselves in a court of law. I mean, it was, that was just, that was pretty mind blowing. And again, the one little thing, and again, this is not to harp on Catherine Oxenberg, but the moment, I believe it was in episode 8, when Mark and Bonnie go to stay with her.
Right.
And they were talking about how Catherine Oxenberg thought they had a dog. And because there was a little bed made on the floor. Yeah. And she and Bonnie are kind of laughing about it. Like, oh my God, what are you doing? Right. And this is an extreme generalization. But there is a slight disconnect when you have exceptionally wealthy people who have grown up. There's just a slight disconnect with them, and like you can see it on Mark's face, and he's like, I am not ready to laugh about this. This was bad. I am ashamed of the fact that this happened. And you can see, like, I don't know if it was polite laughter on Bonnie's part, but you saw, like, Catherine Oxenberg, like there was general she found it funny.
Yes. I mean, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, just how he was able to kind of bring it back down to a very realistic level, and sort of what he perceived to be his failings as a husband at that point. It was heartbreaking.
Yeah. That's a great point you bring up, Shannon. You're right. I mean, you could sense from him that, hey, this is not something I want to make jokes about just yet. This is something that messes me up. And you guys are just playfully joking about it. And that's how they're dealing with the stress of it all, is just to make jokes about it or be playful about it, because to really conceive of what happened here is a very difficult thing to look at. And sometimes, as human beings, Shannon, we got to laugh. And so that's where a little bit Mark, that whole desire of Mark I'm like, at times, if this is a documentary, sometimes actors, directors will perform for the camera, and occasionally it felt like Mark would occasionally perform for the camera these feelings of upsetness or feelings of like guilt or whatever. And Catherine Oxenberg and Bonnie are, they have every right to laugh about the situation, to try as a way to kind of deal with the insanity of it all, because they're out of it. But Mark made it about himself in that moment and made everything about, and then eventually they did come together. But you're right. I mean, that was just a weird moment. And then in episode 9, when he like pulls away and has to sit against the wall and has to cry. So clearly he's a sensitive guy. He takes a lot of things to heart, and that showed through. But that's what I appreciate about Sarah. I really fell in love with Sarah as a person and what she did, because I was like, she got in, and with the same gung-ho that she got in, she got out. And when she got out, she tried to bring everybody out. She like called people out about it, and she put it all on the table. Even those scenes where she's confronting the people at the Toronto Center to try to get them to see the things that she sees, and they have to kind of like grin and bear it while she like, kind of blows up at them a little bit or tries to come at them in an aggressive manner, and not an aggressive manner in a way of like, I don't know, not violating their space, but aggressive, like, don't you hear what's happening? Don't you see what's happening? You got to get out, or you're going to be next. This kind of desperation to get these people out. And there must be an incredible amount of guilt that they carry for the people they bring in to try to get them all out, because they have to feel a little bit like they're the ones who are responsible. Like later on in the show, when Mark has to confront the fact that he brought Bonnie in. He exposed Bonnie to Keith and Keith's mind games, and Mark has to confront his own. I mean, that moment when Mark realizes that the script they've been writing the whole time is essentially their story, him and Keith's story, that was great. Oh, yeah. The look on his face, the fact that he understands for the first time that Rainiere is playing 3D chess and he's playing checkers and like on a crappy board, barely knowing the rules. Keith is so far ahead of him that he was able to manipulate him for years. And then even with this script, completely play with his brain the whole time. And then by the time he realizes it, it's like one of those shock horror moments. And he is just overwhelmed by it. Yeah.
It's the Kaiser Soze moment.
Yeah, basically.
It's Chaz Palminteri looking at the board and putting all these pieces together. Well, and it's interesting because it was episode 1 or 2, but where it looks like Mark is going to do an animated version.
Yeah.
See the way that he, at that point, the way he idolized this guy, the way he deified him almost. Like it's really frightening to be like, everyone has those moments where they feel a little lost. Yeah. And if you're vulnerable with the wrong person, that vulnerability can be exploited.
Yeah. And it can be twisted, it can be used, and it can be put into a certain place. Were you disappointed that we didn't get like some of these other well-known names explored a bit more? Like Kristen Crook seems to get away the entire series. Grace Park, is she still in or not? Why haven't we explored that? Where are the other names? I want other names. I want them to be, I think they should be exposed. I think we should know who's a part of this cult and who isn't a part of this cult because of the things that they've done. So to me, I was a little surprised they didn't do that. And I wonder if it was a legal situation because some of the faces were blurred out in some of those videos, some of those pictures as well. And some of the faces weren't. So I wonder if some of them didn't want to, get in trouble or be part of this connected, even though they're still in. Because clearly, Shannon, this worked for a number of people, man. Like Mark said in the documentary, you don't join a cult. You join something that you think will work for you. And then you realize later that it's a cult, and it's kind of mind-blowing to realize it's a cult and that you got sucked into it. Remember when they're talking to their friends in episode 9 and their friends are all casual at the coffee shop being like, oh yeah, I went to one of those meetings. I said, look how close I came to being part of a cult. Yeah. And it's like, it was almost like a little bit like they were digging at them or insulting them. And you could see the frustration on Sarah and Mark's face and Bonnie's face that they were like, no, we were, we thought, and it really did. You could argue, Shannon, that to a degree, this really did work for all three of them. It really kind of gave them some confidence and had them kind of step more powerfully into the world with their talent and their energy and who they are as a people. But of course, the end result is Keith Raniere recruiting a bunch of these women to become sex slaves for him. And that's insane.
Well, to your point about like Kristen Crook and Grace Park, I mean, we don't know. The documentary doesn't give us enough detail to know how deep they got in.
Right.
How many people they actually recruited. Because I think there's a difference between being a part of this thing, taking part in it and realizing, this is not working for me. I'm going to step away. There's a difference between that and picking up a sword and being like, not only am I stepping away from this, I'm now going to come back at you with everything I have.
True.
And for actors, it's a roll of the dice. Like, do I want to put my public image on the line for this crusade for something that I did a month of? Like, no, I'm not going to do that. Yeah. I do think that's really interesting, but also what you were saying about the people at the coffee shop, it's very easy to be dismissive.
Of course.
In that situation, because no one ever thinks it could happen to them.
Right.
Until it does.
Right.
And I certainly could sympathize with, like, you're laughing right now, but you weren't there. You don't know. So I certainly could feel that frustration of like, okay, you can make your joke, like, yes, ha ha ha, cult.
Right.
Nobody went into this with bad intentions. No one went into this to hurt people. We were doing something that we thought was helping people.
I mean, look, Shannon, how many people are so unaware of the fact that they're living in cults themselves or versions of cults within their friendships? If there's one person in your group of friends that you're afraid to upset because that person might cost you your friends or cost you your connection to people, that's a cult. If you work at a job where a guy or a woman holds your life in her hands, and so you feel the need to kiss their butt all the time or kind of humor their bullshit all the time, guess what? You're in a cult. you're choosing to stay in these situations instead of getting out of these situations. So passing judgment on other people who didn't know they were walking into something and then were getting some really powerful benefits out of it, I think is a bit hypocritical. You have to take a little more,
sure.
or there's a vacuum of self-analysis in that moment. And I think that's the thing that people have to think about. You might be surprised if you took a look at your life. If for people who are watching or listening to us, you might be surprised that you're living in, you have your own kind of mini cults going on in your group of friends or at your job or even in your family. So those kinds of things are certainly possible. They're just versions of what you saw here in this documentary. Did you like another thing I think I really enjoyed was that we got to really kind of explore the relationships between Mark and Bonnie and between Sarah and her man, Anthony Ames. We got to see how the cult came really close they brought them together, but it really came close to breaking them up as well. And that was, kind of, unsettling to watch and frustrating to watch, and seeing how they kind of navigated all of that. Did that affect you in any way?
I mean, it was something that I felt I saw as a viewer earlier on, because in the later episodes where I think they were asking Mark and Bonnie, did Keith try to get in between you? Did he try to break you guys up? And it's 100%. 100%, because you don't want to, for someone in that position, you don't want to lose your allies.
Right.
And if it seems like someone's significant other is pulling them away, what's the easiest way to get them back in is cast doubt on that relationship, cast doubt on that person's intentions.
Right.
I mean, I thought that was really interesting. And also to what you were saying a second ago about, I don't necessarily agree that the term cult can be applied that broadly, but I do think there's a codependency.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Okay.
That people can fall into really quickly. Yes. And I mean, I imagine everyone has been in that relationship where you just could not get away from the person for whatever reason. You were so tethered to them. Your sense of self was so tied to that person and how they saw you. You're willing to sacrifice the things that make you you.
Absolutely. And that's essentially what Keith was trying to do with everybody, right? Let's explore your pain. And we should touch on the Allison Mack thing. There was a lot with Allison Mack in the later episodes. They teased it in the first 3 episodes, and then we certainly got into it with some of the videos and some of the stuff that was going on here throughout the season, seeing her, how she came in and how quickly he was able to kind of get through her defenses when she showed up at that volleyball game, get her to cry about nature and life. And then we saw those videos of her outed touching the butterflies or whatever she's out there. And then we see her slowly but surely get more and more emaciated, and then see how this thing kind of turns her from someone who was looking for purpose, looking to do good in the world, looking to, and we know these people, Shannon, you and I have been actors. We've met these people, male or female, who feel the world in a different wavelength, right? To them, everything, they are sensitive about everything that rolls through their body. And I don't mean sensitive in a denigrating way. I mean that they're just built to feel everything that exists in their world. And certainly Allison Mack looked to be one of those people. And Keith saw that probably almost immediately and knew exactly how to twist that for his usage. And it was kind of tragic. I felt a little sympathy for Allison, not sympathy, of course, for what she did to these girls, but felt sympathy watching her get manipulated by this man and turn her in on herself to where she is just a shell of herself and not sleeping and doing all these things that she's supposed to do for them, and then recruiting these young girls. I mean, dude, when you get to that sequence where they're giving up, have to take pictures of themselves nude to give themselves
the collateral.
The collateral, dude. That's just what? How do you achieve that kind of level of? Okay, I guess it's just mind blowing to watch it happen.
Well, when they introduced Allison Mack in the show, not so much when that meeting with Keith, but when I believe it was Sarah was talking about her, how she and Mark were able to bring in this sort of Hollywood subsection into it. They talked about how Allison Mack was leading the VIP life. Now, what I could be wrong here. What I took from that was because she was on Smallville for 10 seasons.
Right.
She, I imagine, is very, very wealthy from that series.
Probably.
And talk about, you know, leading the VIP life in Vancouver. Like, she's American. So the fact that she chose to stay in Vancouver, it's not like after Smallville, she was lighting up the screen.
Yeah, true. She didn't book much after that. Yeah, you're right.
So more than likely, you have this young person who has all this money and is a little rudderless.
Yeah.
And suddenly you find someone who says, I have the answers. I'm going to be able to take you to the next level. I mean, even like, I don't know musically how deep Keith Raniere's knowledge goes, but the fact that he could sit down with Bonnie, who is a trained vocalist, and say, I want to hear your range. If you do this for a week, it's going to improve. And it's like, well, okay, because everyone looks at him in this particular way, it's like, why wouldn't you believe him? All these people are here. It's a little bit of the flock mentality. Of absolutely. Enough people believe one thing, you might believe it. I mean,
true. Good point.
You can look at politics in our country right now.
Yeah.
I mean, as a prime example.
Yeah, it's a great point. Yeah, absolutely. So just craziness. So I'm sorry, I don't mean to say craziness, but I don't know. It's just, I don't know. It's no offense. No offense. I'm not trying to offend anybody. I'm just saying it's madness all around is what I'll say. Watching it, it's at certain points, I remember my girlfriend and I would just pause it for a few seconds, just look at each other and go, what? Why? How? Just kind of crazy. But of course, as Shannon said earlier in this review, when you're sitting on the outside of it, it's easy to say, how could they? Why would they? Blah, blah, blah. But when you're watching it all happen in context, you can kind of put the pieces together and understand this man knew what he was doing by messing with these people. And we did get a little bit of the background with seeing him like selling his his tech stuff and then selling his herbal supplements or whatever he was selling. We also got a little bit more with Nancy Saltzman, her background as well in all of this. But they kind of took the focus away from them for the majority of that 6th, 7th, and 8th episodes and work on the Oxenbergs. And I find this ironic, Shannon, because now India Oxenberg's story is being told by Starz, not HBO. And then we got a trailer for a season 2 of this thing. Do you think this will be 8 episodes or 9 episodes? Like, what do you anticipate? Because we saw the 1-minute trailer. It's basically them going to court, and in the whole court case, we see Nancy taking off the sash. The yellow sash. So what does that mean? Did she give state's evidence? And is she authentically giving it up? Like that kind of thing. And I read, of course, that there are that this cult's still around. They're being called the Forgotten Ones, and they're still like popping up in other places and recruiting. Oh, and let's not forget Mexico. He was able to burrow into Mexico and affect some of these rich kids of these rich parents and influential leaders in Mexico, and was able to kind of manipulate them into being part of this whole NXIVM thing as well. Kind of crazy. It was almost like Albert Brooks in Broadcast News. Oh my God, I say it here and it pops out there. It was just mind-blowing to watch that happen too.
Yeah, I mean, the trailer for season 2 definitely leads us to believe there are going to be interviews with Nancy.
And Nancy, yes.
And Keith. The fact that they showed we heard him on the phone. Right. And even now, at least in the marketing, even now he's still spinning. He's still spinning. He's trying to figure out a way that he can talk himself out of this situation that he talked himself into.
Right. And this is the danger that I worry about, Shannon, as we go into season 2. Are they going to redeem him? Are they going to explain him? And by explaining him, are they going to do like kind of indirect recruiting for this guy? That scares me as well. So who knows? What if this whole thing has been about them recruiting more people to NXIVM? I don't know. It's crazy. Oh my gosh. That's the long game. Why not? Keith would play the long game. Maybe he knew this whole thing was happening as they were documenting it. He's like, oh, yeah, I'll go to jail for a little bit, but then I'll turn this all around and use the publicity of HBO to bring more people in. Because I guarantee you, there are people who watch this first season and were like, well, it did work for them to a certain degree. Maybe if I try this and like understand where my limits are, then I can achieve some kind of thing. You know it. I know you got to read the fine print of when you sign up for HBO Max. Chances are you might be getting some literature from the Forgotten Ones very, very soon. You too, maybe an NXIVM member. Hey. Anyway, any final things to say before we wrap up this review, Shannon?
No, I mean overall it was something. It was that became my appointment viewing for the last 2 months. It's like I wanted to see what would happen, even though it was sort of the law of diminishing returns in terms of like information. But yes, I mean, if you are a fan of docuseries, this is a interesting watch.
Yeah. I would agree with Shannon. I think it's one not to miss, but I don't think it's one that's going to be like winning all kinds of awards. And because I think there are some issues with some of the narrative storytelling of this documentary as you get into the middle part of the season and a little bit towards the later end as well. So that's kind of that. I kind of ding it on that. So I would give the documentary probably about, I don't know, 7.5 stars. What would you give it, Shannon? Does that sound about right to you? Maybe 8?
I would go lower. I would go 7.
Lower. Okay, you go to 7.
6.5, 7. Yeah.
Okay. That's fair. That's fair. So hopefully you enjoyed this review here, and we talked about a lot of what you would like to see covered in a review. Let us know down there in the comment section what you thought about this first season of The Vow on HBO. Let us know what you thought about a review, and if we gave it a good enough, talked about it enough, and gave it a good enough review there for you all to be satisfied. And maybe some of you watched this without having watched the season and were like wanting to watch this review to be intrigued and see if it might pique your interest to watch it. Hopefully we did that as well. Lord knows we're all at home looking for new content. So this is a good way to go if you want to go. All right, Shannon, where can they find you and everything you got going on, man?
Yeah, if you'd like to follow me on social media, on Twitter, it's at Shannon_McClung, on Instagram at Shannon the Geek Buddy. As always, you can see me every week with Mr. Rocha and Mr. Michael Vogel on the Geek Buddies. And yeah, I've had a couple of good callbacks, but production is slow right now. Hopefully I'll have a new job to talk about soon.
Oh, that would be great. Absolutely. And you can follow me at The Rocha Says on Twitter and on Instagram, as you see down below there. But also, please subscribe to the channel. That's really the most important thing. Subscribe to the channel. Leave a like and comment on this video. Help us march towards 15,000 subscribers as we march towards 20,000 subscribers, all in increments, trying to get there and get bigger and bigger. So thanks so much for watching this review. Remember to like and share this video as well. Share it on your social media, because when you share it on your social media, you're telling your friends and family that you approve of this content and you approve of this channel, and maybe they'll take a chance and enjoy it, and maybe they watch The Vow too and they'll enjoy this review as well. All right, we'll talk to you next time with another review here on the Outlaw Nation channel. Be well until then.